Welcome to CVine News. You're listening to The Truth with your host, Linda Forsyth, and the man with the coolest name in radio, Pimpy.
Remembering 9/11.
Good evening. Today, our fellow citizens, our way of life, our very freedom came under attack in a series of deliberate and deadly terrorist acts. The victims were in airplanes or in their offices, secretaries, businessmen and women, military and federal workers, moms and dads, friends and neighbors. Thousands of lives were suddenly ended by evil, despicable acts of terror. The pictures of airplanes flying into buildings, fires burning, huge structures collapsing, have filled us with disbelief, terrible sadness, and a quiet, unyielding anger. These acts of mass murder were intended to frighten our nation into chaos and retreat. But they have failed. Our country is strong. A great people has been moved to defend a great nation. Terrorist attacks can shake the foundations of our biggest buildings, but they cannot touch the foundation of America. These acts shattered steel, but they cannot dent the steel of American resolve. America was targeted for attack because we're the brightest beacon for freedom and opportunity in the world, and no one will keep that light from shining. Today, our nation saw evil, the very worst of human nature, and we responded with the best of America, with the daring of our rescue workers, with the caring for strangers and neighbors who came to give blood and help in any way they could. Immediately following the first attack, I implemented our government's emergency response plans. Our military is powerful, and it's prepared. Our emergency teams are working in New York City and Washington, D.C. to help with local rescue efforts. Our first priority is to get help to those who have been injured and to take every precaution to protect our citizens at home and around the world from further attacks. The functions of our government continue without interruption. Federal agencies in Washington, which had to be evacuated today, are reopening for essential personnel tonight and will be open for business tomorrow. Our financial institutions remain strong, and the American economy will be open for business as well. The search is underway for those who are behind these evil acts. I've directed the full resources of our intelligence and law enforcement communities to find those responsible and to bring them to justice. We will make no distinction between the terrorists who committed these acts and those who harbor them. I appreciate so very much the members of Congress who have joined me in strongly condemning these attacks. And on behalf of the American people, I thank the many world leaders who have called to offer their condolences and assistance. America and our friends and allies join with all those who want peace and security in the world, and we stand together to win the war against terrorism. Tonight I ask for your prayers for all those who grieve, for the children whose worlds have been shattered, for all whose sense of safety and security has been threatened. And I pray they will be comforted by a power greater than any of us, spoken through the ages in Psalm 23.
The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars
The morning of September 11th, I remember I was exhausted. I was hoping to sleep in that day. I've been busting my butt at work. And this is one of these days in which I can sleep in late. The girl that I was seeing at the time had woke me up in the morning. She said she was concerned because my dad looked pretty upset, saying something about we got attacked by terrorists. I said, what do you mean we got attacked by a terrorist? I said, there's no way in God's green earth a terrorist would be bold enough to attack this country. I got up, walked in the front room. My father's watching TV. And at that time, only the first plane had hit. I remember thinking, it's just a plane that crashed into the building. He said, no, they think it's a terrorist attack. I said, from a plane crash? As I watched the news, watching the first building burn, I sat there and we went back and forth. I said, Dad, it's just a plane crash. I know the media is saying a terrorist attack, but I couldn't understand why. And then, right there live on the news, the second plane came in. I couldn't believe what we saw. Then we knew something was up. I remember watching the news for days, every day tuning in. We heard about the two planes that hit the buildings, then the Pentagon, and then the field in Pennsylvania. Then we knew there definitely was something wrong. We continued to watch the news, and then we watched the collapse of the two towers. I remember all of us being glued to the TV. We wouldn't even move. We just sat there in shock. We couldn't believe what we just saw. People running and screaming. I can remember the voices. I can remember the sounds in the background, all the sirens. I remember when the buildings were collapsing. I remember the crumbling sound that it made. I remember how people were grief-stricken, and then all of a sudden, I remember the nation coming together. I mean, never seen us so united ever. Black, white, brown, Chinese, you name it. All of us walking around with our American flags. voices, we the people, united we stood. We all came together like never before. I remember that day we promised never to forget, that we would always remember what had happened. I think the thing that stands out most about that day for me was a friend of mine was in New York, and he was right under the Twin Tower buildings after the 2 plane crashes had taken place. He was walking and talking, and he was literally right on the street side next to the buildings as they were clearing people away. I remember this, talking to him on his cell phone, and him just letting out an unbelievable sound, almost like a scream. Shock. He's on one end of the phone, I'm on the other. I don't know what's happening to him. But I can hear that he's grieving. He tries to get back on the phone. He's trying to formulate to me what he is witnessing. He was telling me that people were jumping out of the building, the burning buildings. They were either falling or jumping, and they were landing right next to where he was. I can hear the bodies hit the floor. It was upsetting. Over the days, I would sit there and watch the films over and over. And I would try to put myself in their place. What would cause these people to jump out? And you realize they really didn't have a choice. The fires were all around them. The heat must have been intense. I know, my father was a volunteer firefighter. We parked next to fires as he's putting them out, and the heat is just too much to bear. Remembering that these people don't have no choice and they jumped. I remember they showed a couple jumping out, holding hands. Crazy, but I guess I was wondering. It's crazy, but what I was wondering was, in that last moment, for some reason, I was wondering what was going through their mind. I wonder if they were thinking about their loved ones, their families, and how they knew this in a matter of seconds, their lives would be over. I remember all the pictures that came out on 9/11. All the pictures of the heavy equipment coming in there and removing all of the collapsed building. Day after day. Fires still burning for some reason. This went on for weeks. Smoldering smoke, fire. Day and night. They continued to work to clear out the site. They just kept going, and we watched it on the news all day, stuck to the TV. It was like an addiction you couldn't get out of. I remember the people being so united on that day. Black people, white people, brown, Asian, Caucasian, you name it. At that time, there were no races of people. There was just a race of people. The human race. I remember the first responders running in, very brave. That's the thing about first responders. They always put their lives on the line. They were brave. They didn't hesitate. They ran right into those buildings. I remember feeling good about a lot of the pictures that were in the media in which you could see us come together, helping each other out of this rubble, out of this crazy nightmare. People that couldn't walk for themselves were being carried out. I remember people consoling one another, comforting one another, being there for one another. At that time, there was only one issue, and that issue was we just were attacked by terrorists. Nothing else was there to divide us. This attack didn't discriminate. People of all ages, colors, races, sexual orientation died on this day. Watching pictures of children being carried out of harm's way was very hard, I think, for a lot of people to see. I remember the people coming out when the buildings collapsed with that ash all over their faces. All of them. And at that time, I couldn't help but think, you can't tell white people, from black people, from Hispanics. They all look like one people. And there was something about that image, that we were all one people at that moment. You couldn't tell us apart. This event brought us together at one time where people couldn't tell us apart. I remember people coming out in their business suits, covering their face, ash all over them. They had been working in the towers, and a good portion of them were able to get out. But I always think to myself, probably first thing in that morning, that suit was really nice, clean, pressed. These people were ready for work. I'm sure when they woke up in the morning, they had not anticipated this kind of a day. I remember the white ash just being everywhere, all over everybody that was coming out from where the buildings had collapsed. It almost looked like it had snowed. People coming out with cuts on their faces, ash all over the place, clothes dirty, just happy to be getting out of there. It was unbelievable to see. Shortly after that, I remember the memorials right near the attack site. They started putting up pictures of missing people and people that they knew had been killed in these attacks. I remember started off with a handful of pictures, and then it quickly grew to 10, 20, and it just kept growing. And it just kept growing. Before long, there was pictures of 100 people, 200 people. That's when reality started setting in about a lot of this. Next thing you know, there was pictures of hundreds, if not thousands of people that had died on this day. The makeshift memorial wall that people had created near the crash site. It didn't take long for people to go from shocked, upset, crying, to anger. People saying, this is not going to happen in our country. We're not going to tolerate this. Next thing you know, tens of thousands of people started enlisting into the military. We weren't going to let anybody get away with this. We were ready to fight back, and it didn't take long at all. Men of all ages, as well as women, enlisted. They wanted payback. We saw people of all races joining the military. They had attacked a nation, and the people that lived there came together, and they were going to fight back. It didn't take long for Bush to pull the trigger on this. Next thing you know, shock and awe was reported on the news. I remember that day. I remember the media must have had some type of early warning that this was going to happen, because cameras were prepared everywhere. I remember hearing the sirens go off over there in Iraq. We watched but didn't see anything. You're like, there's a sirens, there's a dark sky. And then all of a sudden, you start to hear something in the background. You start to see these flashes in the sky. Buildings flashing. I remember the Scud missiles taking off. You could see them shoot across the sky. I remember the anti-aircraft guns going off. Sound like the 4th of July. Huge explosions happening. It was crazy to watch. That sound of the Scud missile. Bombs exploding. Yeah, those Scud missiles. The night sky was lighting up. It was a sight to see. What started off kind of slow quickly picked up. The anti-aircraft was shooting up a storm, Scud missiles flying through the air, and then all of a sudden a layer of bombs you could just hear drop. And the night sky just light up, flash after flash. We were there to get our get back. Our government told us that these people had weapons of mass destruction and they had aided in this attack against us. This is the war on Iraq. I remember as clear as day, as if it happened yesterday.
I didn't say it.
As the night picked up, the bombing became more intense, the shooting became more intense, the Scud missiles more intense, the anti-aircraft more intense. I remember sitting there watching CNN. We were stuck to the news. I think everybody was. That's when CNN used to love to report the actual news. I remember there being on the news scenes where they had night vision on and you can actually see the trailers of bullets flying through the air. You could see these Scud missiles flying through the air. You could see these little explosions all throughout the night. It was unbelievable to see. You could see shells exploding, bombs dropping. Like I said, Scud missiles flying through the air. It was unbelievable. It was intense. Yep, the troops had landed, and we were there in unbelievable numbers. Like I said, men and women of all kinds joined, volunteered to go get those responsibles for what happened on 9/11. I remember the sense of patriotism happening, that feeling of, yeah, nobody messes with the United States. Let's get some. Hoorah. Everyday images of people loading up in helicopters, going out, fighting, kicking butt. It didn't take long. We had already established air supremacy. Within 3 days, I think we took down the entire Iraqi military. Then our ground forces were there. And then the big fight started happening from there on. It's the toughest part. And then all of a sudden there was an announcement over the news. We have them. We got them. A picture came in that pulled Saddam Hussein out of the ground. He'd been hiding in a hole. And sure enough, they had him. I remember the gentleman who had taken a picture holding Saddam Hussein as proof. Him saying that when he saw him, he couldn't resist. The first thing he did is punch him right in his mouth. I don't blame him. More and more pictures of Saddam Hussein came in. We had him. There was no ifs, ands, or buts about it. It wasn't that long afterwards that we started seeing pictures and videos of Saddam Hussein's execution. He had been quickly tried and he would be hung. And they showed it on video so that we could see the proof that this guy indeed was executed for what he done. I remember the news articles coming out, stuff like the Daily News saying, "We bagged the bum." I remember people celebrating everywhere in the streets. In front of the White House. Joy, laughter, smiles, screaming of happiness. People of all colors, white, black, brown, Asian, you name it, celebrating, united under one cause. Heck, at our home, we celebrated too. We popped open bottles, drank, we got loud. Everybody in our neighborhood was screaming. They were happy. You'd have thought that we had went there and done it ourselves. Because we thought we had put an end to anybody and everybody who would dare try to come, not only attack our country, but infiltrate it in any way, shape, or form. People were singing, they were celebrating. It was a very joyful time. I remember so many people proud to be wearing the flag, flying the flag. We were very patriotic. Everywhere you went, flags were flying off the side of buildings, off the side of houses. You could look down a whole street and see a flag flying off of every single house. So many people proud to be patriots. So many people paying respect to Old Glory. There almost wasn't a day gone by where you didn't see somebody holding a flag, wearing the flag, and just proud to be an American. And on 9/11/2001, we all promised that we would never forget. But to me, it wasn't about forgetting who attacked us. To me, it is never forget who we are as a country. We are united. This country is unique. There's no country like it. And we promised to never allow anything to harm this country again. But then something happened. Something came to us here in the United States. Something that divided us. Something that put a wedge between who we are as a country. We were no longer united. We were divided. Something had came into our country and started putting seeds of hate into this nation. And quickly, instead of being united like we were, people not only were not united, but they hated this country. Patriotism was gone. And you have to ask yourself, who's responsible? Who are the people who are responsible for dividing this country, tearing this nation apart, having neighbor against neighbor, race against race? How did this happen? Next thing you know, we have Antifa running around pushing communism in this country. Now, I was born in the 60s and went to high school in the 80s. The communists were not our friends. As a matter of fact, nobody in their right damn mind would fly a communist flag here in this country. But somehow, some way, this communist agenda has found its way into this country and divided the people. Somewhere along the line, our youth has been taught to hate this country and to burn it down. Every day for 200 days, we watched people tear one city, one community apart after another. We'll watch them burn down buildings, burn down houses, burn down cars, attacking our law enforcement. Total anarchy had broken out. These people have grown to hate this country. This is something that was taught in our schools, continued into college, and has now been infiltrated into this country. The communist agenda. Everyday flag burnings we're seen on TV were only a short, not even 20 years earlier. Those same flags were proudly flown on every house. Watching these kids in the streets burning things down, lighting our flags on fire, and they did it proudly. And then you seen it in the background as clear as day. Their agenda to push communism into this country here. After all that we've been through as a nation, how did we allow this to happen? How do we allow the Communist Party to infiltrate our country? We now have a Democrat Communist Party in the United States. We now have members pushing socialism and communism in our House of Representatives. How did this happen? How did we allow this? The longer they're into Congress, the more damage they've caused. We've never been so divided in our lives. When again, in short 20 years ago, we were a united people. We've watched a younger group of congresswomen come in and totally decimate the old statesmen of the Democratic Party. These career Democrats were so scared of these four individuals that they end up taking a knee for them, taking a knee against our country, and they still today are in office. The new guard taking over the old guard. AOC taking on, of all people, Nancy Pelosi. These four are young and they are smug. And they do a lot of great acting. They're speaking out about socialism and the need for socialism and how capitalism is bad. But if you go to AOC's Facebook page, she has an entire display of merchandise that she sells. Yes, that's right. But it's sad to see the savvy old Democratic Party turn into who they are. Weak, frail, old. It's time for them to be replaced. I've never seen them so weak. Scared, for that matter. Helping push this agenda into our country. Into our country, the United States. If we're not careful, we're liable to see one of these squad members become the president of the United States. And it won't be long until that flag, oh glory, that flag that we've flown, every house and every building during 9/11, have a new look. That of a communist flag. We promise never to forget. And in less than 20 short years, it seems like all has been forgotten except for once a year, and when we come together as a nation to remember what happened on 9/11. It's just a day that comes and goes like any other day, and that's a shame.
Sometimes the infirmities of old age cause loved ones to lose their ability to comprehend what's happening about them. If estate planning documents are in place, the person named takes charge and makes decisions on behalf of the incapacitated relative. But suppose the loved one never took time to have those documents prepared. Hi, I'm Ron Osk from the Elder Law Center. I'd like to talk to you about conservatorships and how families can implement them. Sometimes meddling relatives cause discord among next of kin, making decisions on behalf of aged seniors extremely difficult. That's when the course of action becomes a conservatorship. Conservatorships create authority over the loved one's assets, income, and expenses, and provide the power to determine the residence of the senior and, typically, make medical decisions. For over 20 years, the Elder Law Center has been helping families work through these difficult situations. For a free consultation and our contact information, please visit our website, elderlawcenter.net. That's elderlawcenter.net. And thanks for listening.
Hey folks, just a quick reminder that back in 2008 and 9, a lot of people lost all of their retirement savings and their 401ks and IRAs because they did not own gold and silver. Yeah, that's right. Gold and silver protects you from a market crash. So do yourself a favor, protect your retirement by purchasing gold and silver. You can go to moneymetals.com, reach out to them, and they will help you set yourself up to protect you and your family from having to start all over from scratch. If you're a first-time buyer and you spend more than $100, use promo code PIMPY, P-I-M-P-Y, and they will send along with your order a free half ounce of silver. So folks, do yourself a favor, head on over to moneymetals.com and protect you and your family from a market crash, as well as inflation.
Welcome back to the Seavine News Network. This is Linda Forsyth, and we are here recording on AM 590, The Truth. We're also doing double duty here. Not only are we doing the radio show, but we are videotaping this to be able to give you a visual for those of you that would like to watch this on our website and see some of the pictures that we have to show. Today is the 20th anniversary. The 20th anniversary of 9/11, the 9/11 terror attacks of 2001. And this week, the KSM et al. Tribunals, or I should say pretrials, because after 20 years, what has been going on with the 9/11 trials, also called KSM et al., which is abbreviated for Khalik Sheikh Mohammed and the others, the 5 that are being tried at once, as being the masterminds of 9/11. And after 20 years, we are still in pretrials. So I know that most of us know exactly where we were on the day that this horrendous terror attack happened. I certainly remember. I also visited the New York, the site of where all this happened, a couple years after it happened, and it still was in the process of being cleared away and cleaned up. And there was a heaviness and a pall over the entire area that was indescribable. So I can only imagine what it was like for those that were there. I can't imagine. What I would like to do today, Seavine was the Seabine volunteers were there during the 2019 tribunals when President Trump at the time had opened them up to the civilians and also to alternative media. So Seabine volunteers went to these almost the entire year. And I now understand why. And so as these trials have started again after 1.5 years of GTMO being virtually shut down because of the pandemic, the same shenanigans are starting all over again. So I'm going to just take a deep dive, and I'm going to go right into things that the public needs to be aware of. Okay, this report is on our c-fine.com website, c-fine.com website. It's also on our YouTube channel, and you can find all that on our website. But we made this special report basically titled The Blazing Elephant in the Room of the KSM et al. 9/11 tribunals are being virtually ignored. How did Attorney General Barr's decision to release Saudi officials' name, how has it affected the 9/11 pretrials? Well, interestingly, after President Trump opened up the KSM et al. 9/11 proceedings to the public for transparency, during all of these trials, we found out that the victims and family members of 9/11 had been fighting for years to have information released from our government, who have possession through taped phone calls from surveillance of planning 9/11. These were obtained 6 months before the attacks took place, and they were aware of all the details before the attacks happened. A linguist had identified the names. The Saudi official's name was redacted in a 2012 federal court proceeding that could very well be the true mastermind behind the 9/11 attacks. When the 9/11 family members and victims were repeatedly unsuccessful in having the Saudi official name declassified, it then went to Attorney General Barr, who had the deadline, interestingly enough, of September 10th, 2019 to make a decision for declassification. He basically played two ends against the middle, in my personal opinion. Barr did declassify the information, but he placed it under seal, not to be opened until the appointed time. It was then given to the victim family member's attorney, the 9/11 defense attorney, and the legal counsel for the Saudi official that was named under seal. The family members are now appealing to President Biden to have this information released. He has since stated he may release some of it. In the past, there was a proverbial leak from mainstream media about the Saudi official's name, but it basically was just a small man on the totem pole, so to speak. And unless deeper dive is taken into who he was actually taking orders from, that name really doesn't mean a whole lot. And this could stretch out for another 20 years, even if it was released. Well, in 2001, this is just an FYI, 2001, Crown Prince bin Alawid Talal was in charge of Saudi at that time for the most part. But remember, he lost his Crown Prince status to Prince Salman in 2017. And also at that time, Al-Walid was placed under house arrest along with multiple other Saudi royalty and businessmen in the gilded cage of the Ritz-Carlton Hotel for corruption. I only bring this up to suggest connecting the dots. Now, you can view everything that happens on, GTMO activity in the Office of Military Commission's website, mc.mil/home.aspx. And you click on that link, and it has everything that you need about what is going on in GTMO. In fact, you could even click on where it says daily transcripts. You click on that, and it will take you to the transcripts. They usually have them within 24 hours, at least during the Trump administration. They had them within 24 hours of the proceedings of that day. There's also a calendar you can go on, and it will let you know exactly how long the tribunals are going to last and who's being tried. You've got active cases, inactive cases, everything that's on here, rulings, different viewing sites that you can go to. Everything is there. Well, why haven't the KSM et al. Pretrials gone to tribunal yet? Okay, following is a 20-year timeline of event that I'm just going to go over very briefly. You can see the report on the c-find.com website. Now, again, remember, 6 months before the 9/11 and 1 month after, from April to October 2001, the FBI listened via surveillance as to the how, why, and where the attacks would be happening. They also identified who through a linguist. CVI reported on this in March of 2019. I have a link there that you can look at it should you desire. And this is when some of the information came out, although it was brought out in prior times beforehand. Well, on September 10th, 2001, just a little reminder, something you may have forgotten about, is Donald Rumsfeld announced during a nationally televised press conference that $2.3 trillion was missing, or basically he said it was misplaced, which happened the day before the terror attack. We have a link to that also, although there are multiple others that you can also view. Now, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed was actually arrested and brought to a black site in 2003 and for enhanced interrogation, which basically is saying torture. In addition, 4 others were arrested. These are the et al. And were to be tried with Khalid Sheikh Mohammed. And they were moved then to Gitmo to have all 5 alleged terrorists tried together. This was about 2006. Now, the first round of KSM et al. Pretrials lasted for about 7 years until the case was thrown out of court, deeming information gleaned from enhanced interrogation to be inadmissible in court. So they tossed the whole thing out and had to start from scratch, which at that time started again in 2012. This time, only information freely given by the terrorists to what they call proverbial clean teams, which is basically the interrogation committee that had to be nice to them. In other words, information from the terrorists had to be given and not under duress, otherwise it would not be admissible in court. This was about 7 years later that we were there just in 2019. Now, interesting things happened over and over again. Coincidences, accidents, situations that will continually kick the can down the road, and nothing was ever getting done. And the entire time that we were there, because of a multitude of things that would just stop the proceedings from going forward for whatever reason, not making anything happen. The one time that there did appear to actually be forward movement is when Shane Cohen, the judge at the time in June of 2000, he actually said it in July of 2019, where it was going to tribunal. And the date he set was January 11th, 2021, which gave everybody a year in addition to the previous 7 that they already had to prepare. This is more than enough time, but that set everybody off into a tizzy, into a panic for some reason. They needed more time, they said, and there's a long laundry list of what they've been giving. There was a contempt of court, drama, just absolute craziness, wackiness that went on during those series in there. Now, ultimately, again, during this time, the 9/11 victims and family members were filing multiple times in federal court to have the Saudi officials' name released. And that's when Barr basically just kicked the can down the road, in my personal opinion. And what he did is he had a deadline to make a final decision, September 10th, 2019, on whether or not the name could be released. And Barr did decide to release the name, but under seal to the attorney of the victims and family members, the 9/11 defense team, and the legal counsel to the Saudi government. And I personally have some strong suspicions on who it might be because of the overtop secrecy behind this. Because really, why wouldn't they want to bring up a real orchestrator of 9/11, especially if they were from the Saudi government? Critical thinking is required. Okay, so this continued on, and I'm going to be skipping over the rest of it until I get to January of 2020. On the 11th was when it was supposed to actually be going to tribunal. At that time, which was actually the last proceeding before it was shut down because of the pandemic, it was pretty much a lot of information was brought up on shenanigans of what was going on with the government, some of the things that they were doing. It was brought out actually in court, such as surveillance between, attorney-client privilege and also having one of their witnesses that was also a linguist during the enhanced interrogations back when, they were first brought into the black sites, retired and wound up getting a job on the defense team. And they were recognized by 4 of the 5 being held in GTMO for the KSM et al. Tribunals, the 9/11 tribunals. They recognized her. And so that alone, for the most part, makes it so it shouldn't be going to tribunal. And that actually has been discussed in the number of the people that have been watching these trials. It's like, this is never going to go to trial. It can't. It can't. But yet they continue moving forward and moving forward. Now, interestingly enough, in Twitter, which is pretty much on a liberal perspective, in my opinion, on many of the things that are put out there, Carol Rosenberg, who also writes for the New York Times, has been covering the tribunals since way, way back when, practically when they first started. So she's very adept at knowing what's going on. And one of the things she says, which we find really interesting, when it started, finally, again, this week, just days ahead, as she says, of the 20th anniversary of September 11th attack, the 5 men accused of plotting them returned to court after a pandemic-long shutdown, a year and a half, only to have the hearing quickly recessed. Hearings resume tomorrow. So it goes on. They're doing their same crap again. I'm sorry. Another person mentioned, it was Ken Delanian. He states, today was a perfect example of why this is taking so long. The court session was cut short just 2 hours, so lawyers could read a newly released appellate decision relevant to the case, which itself will be appealed. Endless litigation over procedures. And then he also put the forever trial. Now, Jeffrey Kane mentioned in a Twitter post, defense lawyers say there is one main reason so much here is shrouded in secrecy. The government is still trying to hide the details of what happened to the detainees who were held and tortured by the CIA in secret prisons before they were transferred to Guantanamo. Well, that may be a small part of it, but I personally believe just by watching what's going on, is they're doing anything and everything to not have that name come out that was heard from in the very, very beginning. That right there, to me, is the elephant in the room. What do you think about that? Now, one thing that I was going to bring up on the calendar, this is just for kind of like a fun fact. September 6th, which is Labor Day, was the original day. It was supposed to start this week, but since it was Labor Day, they just had a 2-hour meeting. And the first day is also Rosh Hashanah, which culminates with Yom Kippur, that ends on September 16th. The last day of the trial is September 17th. Rosh Hashanah is the Jewish New Year and is one of Judaism's holiest days. Rosh Hashanah commemorates the creation of the world and marks the beginning of the Days of Awe, which is a 10-day period of introspection and repentance that culminates in the Yom Kippur holiday, also known as the Day of Atonement. And the last day of the trial is number 17. So, high holy days of introspection and repentance. Kind of an interesting time that they decided to do this again 20 years after they have gone to tribunal.